would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
August 6, 1945, 8:15 in the morning. In an instant, the world changed forever. A single bomb, dropped from a single aircraft, unleashed the power of the sun itself upon the city of Hiroshima, Japan. What followed was not just the devastation of a city, but the dawn of a new and terrifying age in human history. This is the story of Hiroshima, a story of science and war, of unimaginable destruction and remarkable resilience. But above all, it is a human story, one that continues to resonate nearly 8 decades later. To understand what happened at Hiroshima, we must first understand the world that made it possible. By the summer of 1945, World War II had raged for 6 brutal years. In Europe, Nazi Germany had surrendered in May. But in the Pacific, Japan fought on. The American military had fought its way across the Pacific in a series of devastating island campaigns. Iwo Jima, Okinawa, each battle more costly than the last. American military planners estimated that an invasion of the Japanese mainland could result in hundreds of thousands of Allied casualties and potentially millions of Japanese deaths. Meanwhile, in secret laboratories across the United States, the Manhattan Project was nearing completion. Beginning in 1942, this massive scientific undertaking had one goal: to harness the power of nuclear fission and create an atomic weapon before Nazi Germany could. Led by physicist Robert Oppenheimer, a team of the world's brightest minds worked at Los Alamos, New Mexico. They were racing against time, driven by the fear that Hitler might acquire the ultimate weapon first. On July 16, 1945, in the New Mexico desert, they succeeded. The Trinity test proved that an atomic bomb was not just theoretical, it was real, and it was devastating. Oppenheimer would later recall the moment, quoting the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." With Germany defeated and the bomb a reality, President Harry Truman faced an agonizing decision. The Potsdam Declaration had been issued on July 26, demanding Japan's unconditional surrender. Japan had not responded. Now, Truman had to decide whether to use this new weapon. A committee selected potential targets. The criteria were specific: cities of military significance that had not been heavily damaged by conventional bombing, so the weapon's full power could be assessed. Hiroshima, Kokura, Niigata, and Nagasaki made the list. Hiroshima was chosen as the primary target. It was home to approximately 350,000 people. It served as a military headquarters and was an important port and industrial center. But it was also a city filled with civilians, men, women, and children going about their daily lives, unaware of what was coming. On the island of Tinian in the Mariana Islands, the 509th Composite Group prepared for a mission unlike any other. Their aircraft was a B-29 Superfortress, modified specifically to carry the atomic bomb. The crew named it the Enola Gay, after the pilot's mother. Colonel Paul Tibbets commanded the mission. His crew of 11 men had trained for months, though most didn't know the true nature of their payload until just before takeoff. The bomb itself, nicknamed Little Boy, was a uranium-based weapon, 10 feet long, weighing nearly 9,700 pounds, with the explosive force of 15,000 tons of TNT. At 2:45 a.m. on August 6th, the Enola Gay lifted off from Tinian. The flight to Japan would take approximately 6 hours. Weather reconnaissance planes had gone ahead, reporting that Hiroshima had clear skies, perfect conditions for visual bombing. As the bomber approached Japan, the sun rose over the Pacific. In Hiroshima below, the city was waking up. Children prepared for school. Workers headed to factories. Air raid sirens had sounded earlier when American reconnaissance planes were spotted, but the all-clear had been given. Most people had returned to their daily routines. At 8:09 a.m. Hiroshima time, radar operators detected the Enola Gay. But it was just one plane, likely a reconnaissance aircraft, nothing to worry about. No alarm was raised. At 8:15 a.m. in 17 seconds, the bomb bay doors opened. Little boy dropped from 31,000 feet. It would take 43 seconds to fall. The crew of the Enola Gay immediately banked hard, trying to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the blast. They had been briefed on what to expect, but nothing could truly prepare them. For the people of Hiroshima, time was about to stop. At 8:16 a.m., 1,900 feet above the city center, Little Boy detonated. In 1/millionth of a second, the uranium core achieved critical mass. The temperature at the center of the blast reached several million degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of the sun. A massive fireball, 1,200 feet in diameter, formed instantly. The thermal radiation traveled at the speed of light. People within a mile of ground zero were vaporized instantly, their shadows permanently burned into stone and concrete. Those slightly farther away were charred beyond recognition. Glass melted, metal bent and twisted, wood burst into flame. 1 second after detonation, the shockwave followed. Traveling faster than sound, it flattened everything in its path. Buildings designed to withstand earthquakes crumbled like sandcastles. The blast wave reached winds of 600 miles per hour near the hypocenter. The mushroom cloud rose rapidly, climbing to 40,000 feet in minutes. From the Enola Gay, tail gunner Bob Karen watched in horror. He would later describe seeing a boiling mass of flames and smoke, and the city below completely obscured by this awful cloud. For those who survived the initial blast, a nightmare had only just begun. Survivor Akiko Takakura, who was 20 years old and working at a bank 300 meters from ground zero, recalled, "There was a flash, and then everything went dark. When I came to, I was buried under the building." The fires merged into a firestorm that consumed what remained of the city. A phenomenon called black rain began to fall, radioactive fallout mixed with soot and debris. Those who sought relief from the heat by drinking the contaminated water or were caught in the rain received lethal doses of radiation. The injuries were unlike anything medical professionals had ever seen. Severe burns covered bodies. Glass shards embedded in flesh. But most mysterious and terrifying were the effects of radiation. People who seemed relatively uninjured began dying days or weeks later, their bodies destroyed from within by radiation sickness. Dr. Michihiko Hachiya, director of the Hiroshima Communications Hospital, kept a diary. He wrote, "The appearance of people was, well, they all had skin blackened by burns. They had no hair because their hair was burned, and at a glance you couldn't tell whether you were looking at them from in front or in back." By the end of the day, Hiroshima was gone. Of the city's 76,000 buildings, 70,000 were damaged or destroyed. The exact death toll remains uncertain. Estimates suggest that by the end of 1945, approximately 140,000 people had died, nearly 40% of the city's population. The Japanese government was in shock, struggling to comprehend what had happened. Communication with Hiroshima had been cut off. When reconnaissance flights finally reported back, military leaders couldn't believe what they were seeing, an entire city essentially erased by a single bomb. President Truman issued a statement calling on Japan to surrender or face a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth. Still, Japan's military leadership hesitated. The concept of surrender was anathema to their warrior code. 3 days later, on August 9th, with no surrender forthcoming, a second atomic bomb was dropped, this time on Nagasaki. Fat Man, a plutonium-based weapon, killed an estimated 70,000 people. The message was clear: America had more than one bomb, and they were willing to use them. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito addressed the Japanese people via radio for the first time in history. In his announcement, he cited a new and most cruel bomb as a reason for surrender. World War II was finally over. But for the survivors of Hiroshima, the hibakusha, as they came to be known, the suffering continued. Many faced discrimination in Japanese society, deemed unmarriageable or unemployable due to fears about radiation effects. They battled cancers, keloid scars, and psychological trauma for the rest of their lives. The children born to survivors faced their own challenges, living with the fear of genetic damage and birth defects. For decades, the hibakusha carried not just physical scars, but the weight of social stigma. Today, Hiroshima has been rebuilt. A thriving city of over 1 million people now stands where rubble once lay. At the center is the Peace Memorial Park. The skeletal remains of the Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall, now called the A-Bomb Dome or Genbaku Dome, stands as it did in 1945, preserved as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a stark reminder of that terrible morning. The Peace Memorial Museum houses artifacts from that day: a charred lunchbox, a melted watch stopped at 8:15, a child's tricycle. These objects bear witness to the human cost of nuclear warfare. Each year, thousands of visitors from around the world come to remember and to reflect. Every August 6th, Hiroshima holds a peace ceremony. At 8:15 a.m., a bell rings and the city observes a moment of silence. Paper lanterns are floated down the river in memory of those who died. The mayor delivers a peace declaration, calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons. The debate over whether the bombings were necessary continues to this day. Some argue it saved lives by ending the war quickly, preventing a costly invasion. Others contend that Japan was already on the verge of surrender and that the bombings were unnecessary and immoral, especially given that the majority of victims were civilians. What is undeniable is that Hiroshima and Nagasaki opened the nuclear age. Today, 9 nations possess approximately 13,000 nuclear weapons, many far more powerful than the bombs dropped in 1945. The world has come terrifyingly close to nuclear war multiple times since then. The surviving hibakusha have dedicated their remaining years to bearing witness. They share their stories, despite the pain, so that the world will never forget. As their numbers dwindle, most are now in their 80s and 90s, their testimonies become all the more precious. Setsuko Thurlow, who was 13 years old when the bomb fell, has become one of the most prominent activists. She was instrumental in the 2017 UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. She says, "I have committed my life to telling our stories of survival. I do this because I want young people to know what we suffered, and I want world leaders to understand that nuclear weapons are not a deterrent but a threat to our survival."
Yeah. When I regained the consciousness in the total darkness and silence, I found myself pinned under the collapsed building. I knew I was faced with death.
Perhaps the most enduring symbol of Hiroshima is the paper crane. Sadako Sasaki was 2 years old when the bomb fell. She survived, but 10 years later developed leukemia from radiation exposure. While hospitalized, she began folding origami cranes, inspired by the Japanese legend that folding 1,000 cranes grants a wish. She died at age 12, but her story inspired a movement. Today, millions of paper cranes are sent to Hiroshima each year as prayers for peace. Hiroshima stands today as both a warning and a hope. A warning of what humanity is capable of when we unleash our most destructive powers. But also a hope that we can choose differently, that we can remember and learn, that we can build peace rather than weapons. The physicist Leo Szilard, who helped develop the atomic bomb, later said, "If the Germans had dropped atomic bombs on cities instead of us, we would have defined the dropping of atomic bombs as a war crime, and we would have sentenced the Germans who were guilty of this crime to death at Nuremberg and hanged them." The survivors of Hiroshima ask only that we remember, that we recognize the humanity of those who perished, and that we work to ensure that nuclear weapons are never used again. In Hiroshima's Peace Park burns in eternal flame. It will remain lit until all nuclear weapons are abolished from the earth. That flame still burns. The choice of what kind of world we leave to future generations remains ours to make.